What's poppin'? What's poppin'? How's everybody doing? Welcome back to another episode of Life According to Rick. Episode 9, baby. We here. Another week wrapped up. How's everybody feeling? It's been a very, very hectic week, I must say. Work's been super chaotic. I've been trying to stay consistent with the gym. I started going back into the gym, so, trying to get myself right, mentally, physically. So, you know, just with everything that life throws at you, you know what I'm saying? Just balancing everything out, everything going on at home. It's been a lot. My wife's been dealing with a lot mentally, and I've been trying to show up the best that I can without adding to the weight. And on top of that, Harlem's behavior lately has been over the top. My man's being a little too extra. And if you're a parent, you already know how quickly that can test your patience when you're already like checked out and exhausted and you're just mentally drained. And one of the things that I've been trying to do with Harlem is I've been trying to be more gentle, right? Like do the whole gentle parenting thing and, kind of like take it easy with him when he does things because I have to remind myself that he's only 3, right? Sometimes when our kids do things, we kind of like get upset and we're like, yo, like, why is this kid like doing that? Like, why you doing that? And like, we yell at them and they looking at us like mad clueless, like, yo, like, why is my dad yelling at me? So I have to catch myself sometimes and step back. But, it's like there's been moments this week where I feel the frustration building and I had to like catch myself to not take it out on him. But a lot of the times that can be very difficult. And then also is like he does certain things that like trigger me and I'm like, yo, little boy, like you really tested my gangster right now. But like I said, I have to remind myself that he's only a toddler and his brain is still developing. And so those are the little things that I'm still trying to learn and work on because I don't want him to grow up feeling like, damn, like I can't talk to my dad or like he's scared of me or whatever the case is. You know what I'm saying? Because that's just a horrible feeling. Nobody wants their kids to be afraid of them. Obviously, we want them to respect us because we're their parents, but we also got to be their safe space. And I'm not saying that to be soft with him because definitely not. Like, but also give him grace and, kind of like explain to him, what he did. And he's a very smart kid because we talk to him and he listens. And it's funny because he'll try to like explain himself, like but because and it's like his brain is trying to process everything that he's trying to say. And, I give him credit for that because he's still a baby, but he knows what he's talking about. That's what's led me into today's conversation because this episode isn't really coming from a place of having it all figured out. It's coming from being in it, trying to repair, set boundaries, and grow in real time. One thing I've really been noticing is how stress from work doesn't really stay at work. Work can be super overwhelming, then you come home, you're tired, you still kind of like trying to recenter yourself, right? And I know myself, a lot of the times, like if I go into the office and work has just been super crazy, I'm trying to regroup in the car on the drive home, before I get to the house because, my wife and Harlem have nothing to do with what went on at work. It's just me carrying too much and not knowing where to put it. Repair for me has looked like me owning that, not explaining anything away, not blaming anyone, just recognizing that when I'm stressed, it's showing up in places that it doesn't really belong. Sometimes repairing relationships isn't about fixing someone else. It's about taking responsibility for the energy you're bringing into the room. And if you think about it, it's like you come home after a long day at work, right? Your kids all excited to see you, and your wife's like, "Oh, hi, how's your day doing?" You come in with a sourpuss face, like mad stank. Like nobody want to deal with you. You looking all crazy like that, and it's just like that energy is just like is nasty, and just one of those things that you can't bring all that work stuff to the crib because that's it's just what it is, work. It's work, and in my line of business, like, it's very stressful. I will say that because I'm dealing with the public all day, on the phones all day, people's energy, they're like vampires. They suck your energy out, like, and it's draining. It can be very draining, and it's nobody's fault. We just have to learn to kind of like disconnect when we clock out. Like that's it. Like you did your job, and now you go home and go be with your family, and that's that. One thing that this week has made me think a lot about is boundaries, especially with work. I'm the type of person that I like to see things through. You know what I'm saying? Especially when it comes to my job. I'm not one to try to outshine people, but when I'm doing something, I like to, make sure that I do my job to the core, like, down to the nitty gritty. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes work can get very overwhelming, right? And I even tend to stay till everything is finished. You know what I'm saying? Like my shift could be done, but I might stay a little extra, to make sure that I don't leave anything behind because nobody wants to be working on stuff from the day prior, right? But what I'm learning is that just because I can keep pushing doesn't mean that I should, because I'm taking time away from, spending time with my son and my wife and coming home, what I'm saying, and chilling with them and being in that moment. When I give everything to work and try to squeeze in the gym and still show up at home, there's not much left. And that shows up in my mood, my patience, and how I respond to people I care about the most. Setting those boundaries doesn't mean I don't care. It just means I care enough to protect my peace. One small thing that I've really been working on is pausing before I react, especially as a parent. There were a few moments this week where Harlem was acting out, and I could just feel myself getting super worked up. And instead of snapping, I tried to pause. Sometimes that pause could be like a deep breath or, just stepping away for a second. Sometimes it was reminding myself that this moment isn't the problem. And if I'm really being honest, a lot of it has to do, with me kind of spreading myself thin because, like I mentioned earlier, you know, getting back into the gym, and working and home life, and even like right now, trying to record to make sure that I meet my personal deadline. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, I like to see things through, so I like to stay consistent. And maybe I'm biting more than I can chew, but I like to give myself a challenge. You know what I mean? So I know that I can do it, but at the same time, it's like I'm human and I'm obviously gonna be tired and exhausted. And, we're doing a lot better with him sleeping in his room. He's been sleeping every night in his room consistently. So we're making great progress with that. So I thought I'd give y'all that quick update. But, he still wakes up in the middle of the night. And, I'm taking myself to his room and laying down with him when he wakes up. And then I end up falling asleep in his bed. And it's uncomfortable because, um, I'm just trying to make sure that he falls asleep, but then I end up falling asleep. And so when I wake up, it's like, damn, I gotta get up and get him ready and and start getting myself ready for work. And then I get cranky because it's the lack of sleep because I didn't have a good night's sleep and I get frustrated. But I have to remind myself that those are just part of things in life that we just go through. You know what I'm saying? And obviously, we're not always going to get it right, but we're also not making it worse, which for me, that's growth. Progress isn't about never losing patience, it's about catching yourself sooner. And think about that for a second. You know, in life, as we get older, you know what I'm saying, we become more knowledgeable, we have more wisdom. Why? Because we've gone through things, and people that don't change over the years is because they don't want to. But you know I'm learning that certain things I have to correct, you know what I mean? And especially with patience, because I've mentioned before that that's very minimal with me is patience. I've always been like a hothead, and I lose my cool real quick, and it'd be the stupidest things, right? And that's something that I really have to work on, and I've been working on it. And so that's what life is all about. I'm saying? Every day is a lesson, and trying to fix those little things, you know what I mean? But back to what I was saying earlier about Harlem, like lately he's been testing his limits. Like he just be having big feelings, pushing back, just being a kid, trying to figure things out. And I know that I can't be the only parent dealing with that. If you've gone through this phase where your kid's behavior really tested your patience, I love to hear how you handled it. Or even just know that, like, that I'm not alone in this situation. So before I wrap this up, I just want to say this. If any part of this episode felt familiar, you're not alone. A lot of us are trying to do the right thing at work, be present at home and taking care of our bodies, all while still managing everything going on in our heads. And some days that can be a lot. If you're in a season where you're feeling stretched thin, frustrated, or like you're constantly reacting instead of responding, I see you, trust me. I'm in it too. This episode isn't about having it all figured out. It's about noticing. Noticing when stress spills over, when we need better boundaries, and when we need to pause instead of snapping. And if today all you did was catch yourself once, just once, that counts. That's growth right there. So, give yourself grace, give the people around you grace, and remember that progress doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks quiet, uncomfortable, and unfinished. So, I hope that you guys have a great and amazing weekend. And once again, I appreciate every single one of y'all for coming through and listening to your boy for another week. Like I said, episode 9, It's been 9 weeks since we've been at it. Really proud of the work that we're doing over here. So it keeps me motivated to keep coming back and, talking to y'all and, seeing your thoughts and comments and all of that. So have a great week next week and we'll catch you guys next time. Y'all already know, still your boy.